Okay, the next one's a big one, and we got a few stories. So, number 4, we have legends of buried treasure in Northern California. And quite frankly, there's a lot of these. And so I picked 3 stories that I thought were really cool, and they're actually mostly in like the Redding area. But here's a setup to these stories. In 2013, a couple that we don't know exactly where they live, but it's somewhere south of Tahoe in the Sierras, somewhere not very far of Tahoe in the Sierras. They bought this new house, and they were walking around, and they found this can hanging from a tree, this old-timey can, and it looked as something was going on below it. They dug up some old coins. This was in their backyard. They eventually sold those coins for $10 million. They found, in their backyard, they found $10 million worth of buried treasure. So that it was known as the Saddle Ridge Hoard, and the names of the people have not been released. The location has not been released, but it sits today as the largest discovery of buried gold coins ever to be recovered in the United States. Now, that makes a ton of sense considering where we live. We live in Northern California, home of the gold rush, right? So there's a ton of legends of these hidden gold encounters. For a couple, people would bury their gold for a couple reasons. One is they robbed a stagecoach and they would hide it. So if they get caught, they could go back and get it later. 2, a lot of people just didn't trust the banks back then.
Still today. I know people that bury money literally today. I swear to God, I am not lying about it. I have a friend of mine who famously buries money.
So, and that's what they think this gold that they found, they think this was someone's life savings. They buried it, died, unexpectedly or something, and it was just never recovered. So, so here are a couple stories of lost treasure, and this is just a small sample size. Rattlesnake Dick, famed stagecoach robber Rattlesnake Dick and his crew stole $25,000 from a Wells Fargo stagecoach in 1856 on the Siskiyou Trail. The Siskiyou Trail comes down through Oregon, past Mount Shasta, very famed trail for Wells Fargo stagecoaches. They they split up the gold and buried it throughout the Trinity Alps. And when they were caught, they told the authorities where it was. Authorities only found $15,000. So the rest of the loot today would be worth $300,000, sitting up somewhere in the Trinity.
That's it? Only $300,000? That's like
for $10,000
nugget.
$10,000. I'd take $300,000.
Well,
yeah. I mean, another story: the Ruggles brothers. Have you heard of the Ruggles brothers?
Sounds familiar.
They're a big part of Redding history. So in 1892, they stole only $5,000 from a stagecoach in Weaverville. And they were captured pretty quickly. And they said they hid the loot in this area about 6 miles west of Redding. So I'm guessing, just on the other side of Whiskeytown, somewhere around there. Authorities found the bag, but nothing was in it. So the loot is out. It's hidden. We don't know. Someone might have picked it up. We just don't know. So this is where the story gets interesting. Apparently, women loved these brothers so much. They were so handsome and charming that they would go to the prison or the jail in Redding, and they'd bring them flowers, and there was like this huge fanfare for these guys that were in jail there. And the men in Redding were so fed up that 40 men, they stormed the jail, they pulled them out, and they hung them from the train trestle there in Caldwell Park in Redding.
They hung him for being too handsome. It's something that I can relate to.
They were legitimate stagecoach robbers. This was not their first,
And don't anyone get any ideas that the O'Brien brothers also need to hang because we're too good looking.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So yes, their treasure was never found. Although one of the Ruggles brothers was actually on the run for another month after his brother. So you could think he probably snuck back, grabbed the gold, and moved it somewhere else. Well, I don't know how you spend $5,000 back then in that amount of time. Who knows?
So for me, anytime you say, like, you see they found the bag but no treasure, it's like, well, yeah, he's probably not hoarding. He's probably not burying. He's probably going to brothels and bars and just spending it.
But like the rest of his crew, well, they had a whole crew. So someone went back and got it. So you would assume, I don't know.
Lost treasure could be spent treasure.
Correct. There's also why am I blanking on his name? The Black Bart. Black Bart was a huge robber of the Siskiyou Trail, and he used to hide his loot over by Hedge Creek Falls. So there's probably a bunch of treasure up there somewhere.
I wonder how they would personally like mark their treasure so they remembered where.
Well, that's
dig,
like that's what's interesting about that story of the can hanging from the tree. It's like just a little marker. But
it's so clearly man-made that even if anybody sees it, like you need to make a marking that
like you can't take a picture natural, on your iPhone,
right? But it looks natural enough to have naturally occurred, and as opposed to like a can hanging, like.
But you remember these places are so remote back then that
that's true.
No one's just stumbling upon these things and being like, oh, let me dig. So third and last one, again, this is just a little drop of all the lost treasure that is apparently out here in NorCal. The Mormon gold of Clear Creek, California. So Clear Creek is that, beautiful river that goes out from Whiskeytown and flows through Redding. And a group of Mormons were passing through the Redding area in the 1850s with a bunch of gold that they had mined. And when they got to Clear Creek, it was just raging with water. And anyone that knows Clear Creek, it's deep. It's not like the widest river, but it's super deep. So it's really hard to cross, actually. So they waited a few days, and the water never died down, and they couldn't just stay there. So they attempted to cross their wagon through the most shallow place they could find. The wagon, the wheel fell down into a hole. It tipped over, and everything went downstream. Now, in 1910, just 60 years later, a prospector found a single gold coin with the Mormon group's initial on it. It's the only thing that's ever been found in Clear Creek. So there's this whole treasure sitting at the bottom of Clear Creek somewhere. I think that's kind of a cool story.
I think it's super cool.
Yeah. Because I think that's realistic, especially like anyone that knows Clear Creek, there's like these little caves down there. It's very hard to...
It's rugged terrain.
It's rugged water. What's funny is our father, Chip O'Brien, he used to actually snorkel Clear Creek for cow trout. He used to do fish counts in there. So I'm shocked he hasn't seen it. But
seen any gold?
Yeah, well,
well, I'm sure he's.
I think he's the only person that snorkels Clear Creek, right?
People do weird things all the time.
Yeah, but not as many as you think. But anyway, those are my stories. There's a ton of lost treasure stories in NorCal. So, if you want to find some, Google them, because I literally found 25 and I just wanted to pick a few out.